Your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. At this point, speakers will need to push *3 to enter the speaker queue. I will now do the roll call and begin the meeting. So, commission members, as I call your name, please say aye if you are here. Dwayne Barton. Norma Bain.
Aye.
All right. Renata Conyers.
Aye.
Christopher Gordon.
Aye.
Roy Harris.
Here.
Joyce Harrison. Shonda Jackson. Kimberly Jones. DeWanna Little, I'm here. Dwayne McAfee. Bobette Mays.
Present.
Glenda McDowell. Tamara Miller. Dwight Mullen. Mildred Nance Carson. Osandu McPeters.
Present.
Thomas Priesta. Dwayne Richardson. Eric Robinson. Raynita Waters. CC Weston. D. Williams.
Aye.
MZ Yehuda.
Present.
Keith Young. All right. Alternates, D. Burris. Tiffany Debelow.
Present.
Shakiki Giles Bayton. Jesse Ray.
Present.
All right. So we got 8 present with 2 alternates. Salah, can you confirm that we have a quorum?
So we don't have to have a quorum for this meeting. We will not be voting on anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank y'all so much for that. All right. Has everyone had a chance to review the February 19th meeting minutes?
Yes.
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 Are there any amendments or any changes that need to be made to those minutes? If not, would someone like to make a motion to approve the February 19th, 2024 minutes?
Do we do this on just a call meeting?
Oh, well, we can't vote.
This is a call meeting anyway, isn't it? And we can't vote. We don't have a quorum. So I think we're still going to meet the last of March, aren't we?
On
We're
the
meeting
18th.
on the
Yeah, a
18th.
week from today,
18th.
yes.
Yeah,
we're
so
not
I don't
voting
think
today.
that we should have to
Yeah,
do
it's
that.
on the agenda. I was just following it. Let me
Yeah, we don't
highlight
have to.
it. Okay, we will not do that. Survey. Bernicia, you're up.
I think we can also skip survey, right?
Well, we don't
Yeah,
vote on
Nick.
the survey, right?
right?
No, we don't vote on it.
Okay, okay. Well, we had a total of 12 participants complete the survey from last meeting, which is we're maintaining, which is great. We would love to see that number continue to grow. A lot of the feedback was related to the presentations given around the timeline, as well as some really great feedback around the community engagement plan. And we'll talk a little bit more about that today. So thank you all for those who have completed the survey. You will get another one from today's meeting, as we may have additional or more virtual meetings if you all choose to. So just keep that in mind to continue to participate in those surveys. So thank you very much.
Does someone have their television on? Is that what I hear?
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
is.
Us.
All right, our objectives for today is number one, community engagement update. And then number two, the IFA report out, joint recommendations, housing and economic development, and criminal justice and housing. And so, our next item on the,
Madam Vice Chair, that's actually a correction. It should be criminal justice and education.
oh, okay. Well, criminal justice and education for me.
Thank you.
Well, right now we are moving into our community engagement update and the one-pager review. And so it's a link in the agenda if y'all had a chance to look at our one-pager that we approved at our first meeting, which was last Thursday. And it was a really nice turnout. We will be meeting again this Thursday virtually. So if any of y'all would like to attend virtually, please do so. The information will be coming out this week, later on this week. So Bernicia, I will turn it over to you to review the one-pager.
Perfect. Do you want me to share my screen?
I can do it for you. Hold on just a second.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So yes, perfect. So for those who are on your laptops, hopefully you are able to see your screen. Because the community engagement plan has been passed and approved by the commission, speaking with the chair and the vice chair, one of the things we wanted to make sure of is that we are talking about community engagement at every meeting, and not necessarily having open discussion, but really reporting out on what the committee, the Community Engagement Committee is doing. So this template here is what the Community Engagement Committee approved to use as a reporting tool back to for our CRC meetings. What you'll see here is just brief information. It is titled Spring 2024 because we know that there's been a lot of community engagement prior to today, but this one-page report will not be capturing that. It will only be capturing the work that the Community Engagement Committee is doing. So there's 19 members who signed up to be a part of the Community Engagement Committee. That QR code there, it is not currently active. We have a meeting with the Cape team on the city, with the city to finalize the design of the community engagement tool. We have asked the IFA group leaders to submit one-sentence recommendations so that we can build out that tool. The one-sentence recommendations, the purpose of condensing it down to one sentence is so that these recommendations can be digestible for the community to give feedback to. The tool for community engagement, once you scan that QR code, it will link to somewhat of a survey format. And so each recommendation will be listed out and the community will be asked, do they support or do they not support the recommendation? I believe on some sort of a scale. And then also there will be a space for them to give feedback about each of the recommendations. So the tool is still being designed. Like I said, we have a follow-up meeting with them on Wednesday, and hopefully we hope to have something to show by the next meeting if we have time. Last but not least, on this one pager here, we hope to keep this chart here updated with actual numbers in real time. Again, this will reflect the work of the Community Engagement Committee. So the number of events, there will be a number there based on how many events the committee has participated in. We know that we've had one so far from the Black History Month brunch. And so there was about 52 people that attended that event. So you would see the number 52 on the second row. That third row is the number of completed surveys. So we are trying to track how many people actually is scanning the QR code and also giving feedback, so fully completing it out. And then last but not least, that last row will be where we will list out the different neighborhoods that we are reaching. So a lot of this is being informed by what you all put in our meeting survey feedback forms. And so again, it's why it's so valuable as we are creating these tools and all the feedback that you all give. We do take it to heart and take it back to the city and the county to make sure that we're developing something that is informed by you all. I will pause here. Are there any questions that folks may have about this one-page report? Okay. Tiffany has raised her hand. Go ahead, Tiffany. And Mr. Roy, I see you as well.
This is not necessarily a question. I do want to thank you though for sharing. I just want to encourage everyone that you can still come to these meetings. Don't feel like as a commission member, if you hadn't came to the first one, that you're not entitled to show up. Please show up and please continue to do what you're already doing in your prospective communities.
Thank you, Tiffany. Mr. Roy Harris.
The previous community engagement meetings that we have, can we track that, or we have no way of knowing what happened before? I remember going over to UNCA. There was one at Shiloh time ago, and there was, because of what I'm afraid of is that we get the same people at the same meeting saying the same thing. So how do we branch out and make sure that we're covering people, are covering areas that we normally wouldn't cover? That's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, so it's a great question. If you have done previous engagement, we actually do want you to go right back to those folks so they can scan this QR code, because this is specifically on the drafted recommendations that you all have, taken all of this time to craft. So we do want you to circle back to those people that you have previously engaged. It would be hard to track what you have already done without some additional intentional conversations with everybody. So I can't say that that's what we would be prioritizing for this particular type of engagement. But I will also say that there was a second point that I was about to say and it just slipped my mind. It'll come back to me, but the gist is we do want you to return back to the folks that you have previously engaged, because we want their feedback on the drafted recommendations. So that's what we want to be able to track. The other part, it just came back to me. The other part is that the committee is where it's the committee's job to make sure that we are reaching different neighborhoods and different groups and different voices. So if we find ourselves reaching or engaging with the same people, it's the committee's responsibility to make sure that we engage differently, which is why, it was decided to even create this, committee around community engagement. So that would fall on the committee.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question. Anyone else have questions or comments? Okay. Well, if you think of any, just remember you can put it in the survey after this meeting. Thank you so much. Back to you, Tawana.
So one small other update around community engagement. So if you had a chance to look at the timeline that was presented to y'all at our last meeting. We are a little bit behind on as far as engaging the public housing communities and things like that, just because it was a little bit of a process, and to being able to go into those communities in the manner that we would like to do it. But that has been finalized, and we are working on the calendar of events. And so while that calendar of community engagement activities is being developed and will be pretty much managed by the Community Engagement Committee, we will send it out. So if there's any of the events that y'all as commission members feel like y'all can show up to and support in any way, please feel free to sign up and let us know if y'all are interested in participating. You don't have to come to every activity, but we would like to kind of spread it out across, and definitely in reference to your respective communities and we're engaging in. And so I just wanted to throw that out there and support what Tiffany said about please participate if y'all want to. It's plenty of opportunity. There will be plenty of opportunity moving forward. All right. So with that being said, I'm sorry.
One more question.
Mm-hmm.
How do we engage the nonprofits and the funders and the Dogwood Health Trust people and all of that? How do we engage them?
So super cool. I'm glad you asked that. Yes. So we're actually having a separate committee that will run parallel to this community engagement initiative that will be engaging like our public-private partners, people who we can bring to the table, from banks to nonprofits to Dogwood Health Trust and things like that. They will be starting that conversation and developing that list of people that need to be at the table so that we can start engaging them around reparations and what that looks like for their respective institutions. But that's a part of community engagement, but it's also a separate thing because we're looking more to them, not necessarily for just input on our recommendations, but for support of the initiative around reparations. And so that will be running parallel. That's a separate little committee. Woo-hoo. And if you want to be on it, please put that in the survey. If you would like to be a part of that, I think I know 2 commission members who said that they definitely want to support in that. And so Mr. Harris, if you would like to be a part of that, please do put that in the survey and join. Or y'all can put it's no chat on here. So or just let us know in different forms. You can send an email and say, I'd be interested. That will be a group that's handling it as a part of it.
Madam Vice Chair, if I can just add that if there's anyone who is interested in either one of those community engagement groups, you can email myself, Dawana, and Bernicia, as we are working to make sure that we have a complete list. So you can just send us an email letting us know that you are interested. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so now we're to the great part, IFA report out and presentations. I'm super excited about this and hearing all the great things that housing is doing and stuff. So I will turn it over to you, Salah.
Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes.
Is it large enough?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Well, my name is Salamanaya Merritt. I am the Director of Equity and Inclusion. And this evening I'll be presenting on the housing and economic development recommendations. It will be primarily housing with one joint recommendation with the economic development IFA. So included in this presentation is the purpose of the presentation, the individual IFA recommendations, that joint recommendation that I just spoke about, examples of other projects, and then a roadmap or shared recommendations and implementation moving forward. The purpose of this presentation is again to share related recommendations between IFA groups and received input from members of the CRC on creating unified recommendations across IFAs. Oops, went too far, y'all. For some reason, it is.
Can that be made any bigger? Because it looks so small.
Does it look small? Okay, let me see if I can make it bigger for you. Is that bigger? Like, is it too big?
That didn't do anything, Salah.
It's actually getting bigger on my side.
Yeah, I think this might be as big as it can get, Miss Renata.
Ms. Renata, there's also a link to the presentation that is provided inside of the agenda that was sent over to you. So if you click on that link, you'll be able to see the presentation, and that's for everyone else who is also in this presentation.
Okay.
Okay, my apologies for that. So as you'll see to the right, we have our housing recommendations, and we have a list of economic development recommendations. I believe there is an additional recommendation that has, or three that have come out of the economic development, which is an overlap. We did not add those, as those recommendations have not, we haven't had them reviewed by staff on both the city and the county side. The recommendations that we're sharing this evening are the ones that have been reviewed by both the county and the city back in September of 2023. So what you'll see here is the joint recommendations for both housing and economic development. For housing, we asked about a land acquisition program, and for economic development, they also talked about land usage. So under land acquisition, we talked about return of urban renewal land, acquire vacant and underutilized land outside of urban renewal, a dollar lot program, a Charlotte Street project, and Black home ownership, financial literacy, and action campaigns. As we look at the economic development, you'll see that there definitely is an overlap when we talk about Black Economic Development Center, and then plan and develop complete communities, which is under the housing. We also have two other recommendations, which are the accountability piece. And so that goes back to the Reparations Accountability Task Force recommendation that was submitted, or actually shared with you all back in December when Education and Economic Development presented. And then we talk about creating generational wealth, or building wealth and poverty reduction. We know that as we acquire land, land is wealth. And so those are the four recommendations that overlap when it comes to economic development and housing. So for our next slide, we're going to talk about a resolution that was created by the Housing IFA, supporting housing and reparations in Asheville and Buncombe County. Most of these are just, it's actually a culmination of all of our recommendations. And what we would like to do is to immediately have the land immediately returned from urban renewal land that is currently being held a moratorium with the city of Asheville. That was something that we presented to you all. I want to say it was over the summer. So we presented this already. This came from feedback from community engagement that we conducted, I want to say back in June of last year. And then we want to explore the acquisition of underutilized and vacant land. That was a conversation that we had as well. So we're requesting that the city and county initiate a comprehensive assessment of the above referenced land in their respective jurisdictions. And this is being done with the intention of acquiring such land to be returned to the Black community in lieu of currently utilized urban renewal land. So any land that is being utilized that was taken during urban renewal is land that we cannot get back. And then we want to create a joint land acquisition program that will require at minimum the amount of acreage that was taken from Black people. So it wouldn't be the land that was taken during urban renewal, but it would be land that's again in the amount of acres that was taken during urban renewal. So the city and county would establish a joint land acquisition program. We will prioritize land in proximity to existing Black communities, coordinate efforts, and allocate resources to ensure a comprehensive approach to land acquisition and reparations. And again, looking at acquiring the Charlotte Street corridor and creating a dollar lot program. And the next slide, we are showing some comparisons of what's currently in place and some example programs. So when we look at land acquisition, there's the Asheville Buncombe Community Land Trust. We actually had them attend our housing IFA some months ago. The only concern that was voiced was the fact that you don't own the land. And so that was definitely a concern for us when it came to the Asheville Buncombe Community Land Trust. But an example program is, again, the land acquisition with the city and the county governments. And this is something that they have done before. And I think the next slide will talk about that a little bit more. We also looked at the dollar lot programs. Previously, the city did have a dollar lot program. They no longer have that. But we looked at the city of Chicago, who has a large lot program, and it is a dollar lot program. So it's more commercial properties versus land to build homes. And then the city of Asheville dollar lot program, again, we had that in the past. We look at the Charlotte Street program. So the city of Asheville Planning and Development Department was doing some work with that. But we also looked at the fact that Lord Act Sargent, there was a report that was done, and I believe it was paid for by the city to look at mixed use property and what that could look like here in Asheville. And then we looked at home ownership and literacy. So we know that there's Asheville Area Habitat that builds housing and helps individuals to get into housing. There's Mountain Housing Opportunity, and then On Track Financial. We put On Track Financial in there due to the fact that in order to buy a house, you have to be financially prepared and ready. And so helping to build that foundation. But what we wanted to do was look at other programs across the nation that was also doing some type of programs that seem to be working. So other models are the National Urban League Comprehensive Housing Counseling Program, and then NACA, which is a Neighborhood Assistance Corporation of America. And NACA came about from banks who were being provided money in Black communities to be able to give loans to individuals to buy homes. They found, this is back, I want to say in the 90s, the late 90s, early 2000s, that money was not going to the individuals or the communities that it was supposed to go to. And so NACA was created from that. So what is the roadmap to get to where we need to be? Again, we're going to have this CRC review. We want to review and discuss versions and agree on some necessary components. So we actually want to make sure that we're getting feedback from you all with regards to the recommendations that we would like to put forward. We want to have some community engagement. We're already beginning to do that, making sure that we identify what is required for successful long-term community engagement by city and the county. Develop those partnerships and get some funding. So mapping out those existing resources. We want to assess the gaps, identify financial resources, align with goals, private and public, which goes to your question, Mr. Harris, about meeting with those, the private and the public organizations when it comes to community engagement. The ongoing accountability, so establishing those long-term processes for implementation and accountability, and then looking at technical expertise, aligning with the city and the county processes, and hiring, if possible, outside contractors where needed, and then, of course, addressing those harms. So our projects address current and past harms, and continuing documentation of these as needed for repair and the justification of reparations projects. So that completes this portion of our recommendations for the housing and the joint recommendations with economic development. I'm going to pause here, and if there are any questions, comments, feedback with regards to this presentation. And if I need to go back to any of the slides, please let me know. And I can't see hands because I'm looking at the presentation. So Madam Chair, if you can help me with that.
Yeah, we have a Christine has a question.
CC Weston.
Yes. Salah, did I understand that you said for the land acquisition that it would not be ownership of the land?
So I was speaking of the Asheville Buncombe Community Land Trust.
Mm-hmm.
So currently they have where you can buy a home, but you don't own the land. So you don't own the rights to the land. You own the home, but not the rights to the land. And so that was something that was concerning for many in the housing IFA, because we want to own the land. The land is
Right.
where the wealth is. You can build more houses, but you can't build more land, right?
Okay. All right.
So we were looking to alternatives of that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The 828 last digit 76.
So who's speaking? And I didn't hear you.
This is Jesse Ray. I just wanted, as a result of the presentation, to see a link between Dewana's previous presentation on community engagement and this one with economic development. And I see that our engagement partner for economic development, and this is my suggestion in terms of that component, is to engage our local real estate community. I think need to be a partner in this, as well as the banks and credit unions. I think we have to bring these community partners in from the private sector, which will give us access to a broader markets in both real estate and financing, in addition to the City and County's Land Acquisition Trust. And it would put individual community members in the normal stream for real estate and financing. So I want to suggest that our community partners should include real estate companies and the financial institutions, both banks, credit unions, et cetera.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. I am noting that. I will say that we talked about, so I pulled up the slide that has the joint recommendations on it. And one of the bullets is Black Home Ownership Financial Literacy and Action Campaign. We have spoken about banks and credit unions. And so we are on track with that, but I have added the real estate community as well.
Are there any more questions or comments around the recommendations that have been presented?
I have
a question.
Go ahead.
This is Roy Harris. Sala, when you mentioned the Charlotte Street corridor, are you talking about where the city buildings are now and all of that stuff?
Yes.
All the way up to Biltmore Avenue? Is that what you consider the stuff?
I can tell you it is where the city buildings are. I am not clear if it's all the way up to Biltmore Avenue. But I can, if there's someone that is in housing that can help me out with that. I don't remember saying anything about Biltmore Avenue.
This is D. Williams. I'm in the housing IFA also. And it's 5 acres that are up there. From literally at the corner where the ABC store is, all the way up to the land that includes the fleet maintenance facility, which is a brownfield currently. Right. And there's an existing port on all of that. So it is not the actual sweep of the entire corridor, because Buncombe County also owns, but let me say that they are taking suggestions on what to do with that land on Valley Street. Buncombe County is as well, so that's a whole nother conversation. And in addition, I was looking at some of the names that were mentioned, like Habitat and Mountain Housing and On Track. One of the things that I look at is data. And from what I'm seeing, these institutions have not appropriately served the Black community based on data. And that is a real issue when we talk about the performance audit. It looks like they kind of referenced that there was no data available. So there hasn't been any data to show where these pejorative comment needs to be made about turning assets or cash or whatever to these existing so-called mainstream institutions that don't seem to be able to service us. The other thing that concerns me too is just the fact that everybody talks about micromanaging and who we need at the table. Well, banks don't deal, and no other institutions, including the city and county, are going to deal with any entity that has not formed a 501c3 or a community development corporation. Not unless there's a plan to turn these funds over to an existing nonprofit, which most of us don't know about. But let me just say that that is the work of the organization that should come after this, that is chartered to take these funds on. So I guess I'm just kind of confused that the references to talk about bringing other partners in, and you don't even have an entity to even deal with these people. And so with that, that's just my concern. So if you can address that about forming another entity that is a 501c3, or if you don't want to form one and you know whatever you're going to do, it would be great for us to know as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. Thank you for that. Let me address the reference that you made to Asheville area Habitat, Mountain Housing, and On Track Financial. So those are current programs that are in place. And if you remember, as we were speaking in the Housing IFA, we were saying that we needed other programs, maybe to supplement or to replace these programs. So I'm mentioning those just as these are the current programs, but the example programs are programs that may be something that we can utilize or we can model after. So that was a National Urban League's Comprehensive Housing Counseling Program, as well as the NACA program. So thank you for that. When it comes to the 501c3 or the entity that will help to move this work forward or hold some of the reparations or the reparations after this process is over, that is definitely a bigger conversation for the full commission. I would say that you all don't have to wait if that's something that you want to do, but you all need to decide as a commission if that's what you want to do and how you want to move forward with doing that, with forming that organization.
Yeah, I'd like to also add, we have been discussing that, especially in reference to the accountability and the accountability recommendations of having that separate body and entity. And I did pose that question for the legal counsel of the city and county at our last meeting. And so I think that does deserve further conversation and maybe some more meetings and more intentional conversation around what that looks like and where the commission stands around it as a whole. But thank you so much, Dee, because you keep it on the front of our minds, and I'm super appreciative of that because that is a necessity.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Dawana, Salah, can I also ask a clarifying question on based off what Dee just shared?
Yes.
So when it comes to the recommendations, it is clear that the funds need to be housed somewhere. So when these recommendations are put forth, should the recommendation include that, for example, when you say return land, that you specifically lay out return land to the specific entity that the commission has agreed?
Mm-hmm.
Because as it reads, it's return land, but it doesn't necessarily say to whom. If you say, Black residents, we know that the land can't be specifically returned to individuals from city to county, but it can be returned to an entity. So I'm just thinking through when this gets submitted, should the language be that clear where we say to this specific or an entity that the CRC will agree upon? Should that be included in the language to honor what Dee is saying?
Yeah,
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
I think that's gonna be required because like we just have had as Black people in Asheville those negative experiences with leaving things broad and open. And then when they do what we don't want them to do, then we should have been more intentional. And I think that more intentional that we can be. And so I think that conversation that Dee was referencing around the entity is a big thing, especially as we start getting closer to sending these recommendations up and voting and approving for them to move to the next level. We're definitely gonna have to have that sorted. So yes.
Definitely. Thank you, Bernicia, and thank you, Dawana. I go back to that Global Accountability Task Force. I think that's a recommendation that we're going to need to, as a commission, that you all as a commission are going to need to take a look at and decide if that's something that you want to use, a framework that you want to use to move forward with developing that entity.
This is D. Williams again. If you do not develop an entity, the law will prohibit the city from conveying any land to you or to the commission, because the general statutes say that in order for the city to convey land, it must have a public purpose and it must be conveyed to an entity that assigns and ascribes to that public purpose. And so this is where legal counsel of both the city and county come in. And I think that's something that they're going to have to be more involved with. Let me just say that timing means everything. One of the things that we're finding out is that the city and county are ready to divest itself of the land on the Charlotte Street corridor, South Charlotte Street, Dallas Street, or whatever you want to call it. So those conversations need to happen very, very, very soon, if you will, so that this opportunity does not get away. And as we talked about, it is a brownfield. So it's going to take the city in conjunction with this entity to get the funds from the EPA to abate the brownfield contamination and take possession of that real estate. But that is all that I'm saying, is that this conversation needs to happen with the city sooner than later. And the entity does need to be mentioned. It needs to be mentioned. Like you say, if it has to go back to the commission, whatever entity there is, it has to be a 501c3, whether it's the Reparations Finance Authority, whether it's a new 501c3 that you come up with, whether it's another one, Dogwood Health, whatever. The city is not going to convey this land without there being an entity that will serve the public purpose and be a community development corporation or a 501c3. And that's something we have not talked about. And we're nearing the end of this process. So that's all I would like to say. I just want to make sure that people who need to benefit, and that the transactions and the transfers happen. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Dee. And I'm going back to what you said about it being an entity. Speaking with Brad and I believe Fru as well, they did speak to us in the Housing IFA and shared with us that it could not go to an individual, that there had to be an entity put in place. So we as a Housing IFA are aware of that, but you're right, the larger group, if they're not aware of that, needs to be, they need to know that. And I'm not sure if there's a hand up, because again, I can't see.
Yeah,
Michael
here. Yeah, I don't know if Brad's on here or not, so I'll pitch in. I mean, I know the city, just so y'all can keep in the back of your mind, I know the city conveyed property per the statute Dee was mentioning within the last year, conveyed a property to a nonprofit corporation carrying on a public purpose. That was called I know you're all familiar with, my daddy taught me that.
Mm-hmm.
So think of that as the model. I mean, that's a private 501c3, but it carries on a public purpose. So that would lend itself to statutory authority for conveyance.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly program would be involved would be a matter that would have to be developed, of course, but it has to carry on a public purpose in such a manner that the city or county would be authorized to engage in that purpose.
And Michael, this is Brad. I am on here and happy to share additional information. We don't have to disrupt the agenda this evening, but if the IFA or individual members want to hear more about that, I was directly involved in the transaction and the contract where the property was transferred to my daddy taught me that. So there is a way to do that. Michael is correct. This is in the community development statutes, specifically that require that nonprofit entity in order to convey the land. There are some other uses, for instance, just as an example, like affordable housing, where it does not necessarily have to follow that same set of requirements. But for community development, which is going to cover a lot of the types of community purpose things that we've talked about, you do have to have that entity. It does have to be a nonprofit. So I'll step back, but happy to answer more questions as you all need.
I do have a small question, Brad and Michael. The Dollar Lot program, right? So was that under affordable housing, or like what was? I guess Brad, that would be more for you. I don't know. How did the Dollar Lot program work? Was that under affordable housing?
Yeah, from what I know about it, and the Dollar Lot program was before my time, so I can only speak to historical awareness, but I think that was an affordable housing program that the city did. So it's good that the city and the county both have some additional authority around the creation and maintenance of affordable housing. And in those cases, we have a little more leeway with who the property gets transferred to, which I think would even include potentially individuals and not having to have an entity, or even for-profit entities under certain circumstances. But just I'm speaking very broadly right now. The public purpose there is the affordability, and that's what gives us a little authority there. But I think the Dollar Lot program fell into the affordable housing statutes.
Yeah, I was wondering that because my aunt actually benefited from that. And so I'm like, she was an individual. So that's why I was just needing that clarity. Okay. Thank y'all. Any more questions or comments?
I have a question for Brad. Brad, isn't Charlotte Street a state highway?
Yes, sir, Mr. Harris. It is. That entire section is a NCDOT maintained and owned property.
So the DOT has a right-of-way boundaries on it, right?
That's correct. I can't tell exactly what the sizes are and the limits, but that is a DOT road. So they're always going to have a certain amount of additional right-of-way ownership adjacent to the property.
Does that make it easier or make it harder for land to be transferred? Or if we get to that point?
Well, I think the land that we're going to be talking about is going to be outside of the right-of-way. Okay. So I don't think it's going to play a major role in the transport portion of that.
And Dee, let me go back to you. I think you had said something about a brownfield. What are you talking about, the brownfield?
The brownfield is where the fleet maintenance department is because of the fluid that comes from diesel and gas repair there, and that's usually an ordinary consequence of gasoline and diesel powered vehicle repair. So it has to be abated, and certainly we do have a precedent in that area. There was the E.U. Jones property up on 55 South Market Street that I participated in. There was a brownfield that we did have abated. It was private property, but he was the largest property owner. So there's a precedent. And the only thing that would happen, the city could easily get funds from the EPA join with us in getting that property abated. So yes, to answer your question, it is. But that is easily fixable. Thank you.
But doesn't Town Branch or Nasty Branch run under it?
Under the subject property?
Yes.
I don't know if it is. It's piped in. It was not a brownfield by virtue of that. Okay. The Nasty Branch runs over in Southside and has been piped in. I did have the opportunity to kind of dump and fill that before the pipes were laid over in Southside in Central Tract 7 and 9. So there were no Nasty Branch tributaries over on Charlotte Street that we're aware of. it was created with the brownfield that the city services vehicles on. That is the only way that we know of that it has become contaminated. So we would expect help from the city, and I'm sure they would be happy to provide that funding and that application to the EPA for the abatement of that brownfield. Thank you.
So I do want to say this just because I have knowledge of it. As we talk about the South Charlotte Street corridor, also the inclusion of East Valley Association, Eastern Valley Association, they actually have a proposal that they have been working on for a few years. They have been submitted and working with the city, different city staff around for that same corridor. And so I just want us to be intentional on including them in the conversation as we move forward with these recommendations, because I do know that that is something that they have been talking about possibly utilizing for their vision for that legacy neighborhood. So please, housing, y'all might want to invite them to the table, or economic development, whichever one is talking about the Charlotte Street corridor, because I know they do have a vision and have did a lot of work to develop a plan for that area as it's a part of their community. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And now we are moving to our second round of presentations, which is criminal justice and education. Salah, back over to you.
MZ has his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, MZ, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Housing and Economic Development, for your hard work. I just had a number of questions. One was a request, possibly for like Salah or Dr. No, to see if we can get like a demographic map of Asheville and Buncombe County to know exactly where the larger populations of Black people are living currently. I think that would help to inform, our community engagement beyond just the city of Asheville and even further into the city of Asheville. So I don't know if any IFAs has requested that as of yet, or if we're just going off our wisdom, our local wisdom. But I think if we can get like some demographic data around it, that would probably help to steer us stronger into the direction we're trying to go. That was just one request. The second thing is there was a portion on the map that talked about a roadmap, and I just wanted to see if we could sync that with the timeline to kind of know what that looks like between now and June, I'm guessing. The third piece is around joint proposals. I know accountability is one. I also know that there's some other joint proposals in the pipeline. And I'm just trying to figure out, again, a time on, and I don't know if it's a city and the county, up for the city and county to plan it, but this is just for the commissioners to think about how we discuss like some of these joint proposals, especially around accountability. I know education has been kind of spearheading it, but I know one of the questions is we're all trying to figure out how to incorporate all the IFAs into that discussion around accountability and even the independent agency. So that's a question, and that's a point that I'm making for the commission members ourselves. And I think that's all that I have for now.
Thank you, MZ. All of those have been noted, and we will follow up with you and the full commission.
MZ,
and I just wanted to come. Go ahead.
MZ, just a small question of clarity. You said the roadmap. What does that specifically reference? Is that a referencing community engagement, or is that a referencing this whole process as we start moving towards that June deadline? So I I just needed clarity. I'm sorry.
I think it was the roadmap that was part of Salah's presentation.
Yes.
It might have been like the last slide, I think.
It was the last slide, and that was, it actually was shared with, from Economic Development and Education in December. So we kept that same roadmap. And so you're saying to make sure that it syncs up with our current timeline. You want to see how it syncs up with the current timeline. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And for you all, if you can't see I stopped sharing my screen, but it is the last slide. And again, you have the link to the presentations in your agenda. Any other questions?
I think Dee had a question. I'm sorry. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Dee.
I was just going to say that unfortunately, the Black population here in Asheville has declined and continues to decline. There are two census tracts 7, 9, and Shiloh, where there are concentrations of African Americans at right now. And beyond that, you're going to find these are the so-called legacy neighborhoods still intact. But African Americans, most of us emanated from those very neighborhoods, and a couple out in the county called Frog Level. You got Concord, you got Lytle Cove out in Swananoa, and there's some other pockets of it based on the demographic maps from the U.S. Census. Also, when you talk about joint proposals and accountability mechanisms, it looks like we've gotten away, or some of, with all the good intentions in the world, it looks like we don't have a concept of what organizational development is all about. And it usually falls to the nonprofit institution that's created, and you provide a scope of work for them with timelines and rubrics and all of that to achieve all of the concepts that you want to do. I think what happened was that you tried to merge them and root out the ones that seem duplicative or whatever. But the fact of the matter is that the accountability mechanisms, when you talk about this, can only go over to be carried out by a nonprofit institution. So I think this is where the frustration comes in, where we keep adding things to it and adding things to it rather than set up operations, bylaws, articles of incorporation, mission statement, and all of that. I think that's the thing that is missing. And some of us, everybody has something they're good at. And a lot of us, we all have good intentions for the community, but basically accountability can't be chartered in recommendations. They're only chartered and enforced by an institution that is set up to create with rubric, tangible outcomes, and performance metrics. So that's all I have to say. I just want to keep it real. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Dee. Any other final questions or comments before we move on to the next presentation? All righty, so I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you all are able to see this. Again, if it's too small, it is linked in your agenda. This may look the same, but it is a different presentation, just the same format. And then again, this is for criminal justice and education. What I'm going to do is, because we've already gone through what is included in this presentation, so I will not touch on that again. Also, the purpose of the presentation remains the same, so I will skip that slide as well. And then we'll go and take a look at the education and criminal justice recommendations. What I did do for this slide was I did not put all of education's recommendations in here. I just put the one that was overlapped with one of ours. So what you'll see is the school to prison pipeline is one of the recommendations, which eliminating the school to prison pipeline was one of the recommendations for the criminal justice IFA. And then you'll see education had to stop the harm. And so those two overlapped. We'll go into deeper detail in the next slide with regards to this. But we also have some buckets that we had in criminal justice, which was related to racial disparities. So eliminating racial disparities from the court and legal systems and law enforcement. Some training, required mandatory annual, periodic, or ad hoc training of public servants in the field of criminal justice. to support Blacks who have been involved in the criminal justice system. And then we have recruitment and accountability as well. So on this next slide, you'll see, and I'm sorry, because it looks like some of the things kind of jumbled up for some reason. You will see that the joint recommendations, again, is to eliminate the school to prison pipeline and then to stop the harm. And so we talked about in criminal justice, how to create and implement culturally competent Black restorative programs. Eliminate the usage of discretionary authority by school resource officers in the charging of students for low-level offenses, and then require the mandatory practice of requiring parents or guardians to be notified and present prior to any police officer having custodial interviews with minors in school or in the community. Education reached out to us, and again, they had created a Stop the Harm with regards to what we were doing in criminal justice, eliminating the school to prison pipeline. And so for what we were asking for in our recommendation, they pretty much laid out some things that could be done. So it would be the establishment of a suspension review board, an establishment of community-based advocates, strict guidelines for RSO, intervention into school discipline issues, know your rights and resources, share with parents and caregivers, and school and community personnel should have input on the appointment of school resource officers. Again, we come down to the bottom, and there is that accountability piece, which is the Reparations Accountability Task Force, which we kind of touched on in the last presentation and had some conversation around. So when we look at the individual IFA recommendations for criminal justice, again, we have buckets. We have the racial disparities, the training, the funding for community-based support services, as well as recruitment and accountability. And I'm going to touch more on that in this next slide, which is, again, examples of current programs that we have here locally and other programs that we might be able to model. So currently we have the Buncombe County Justice Resource Center, which is the diversion services programs. One of the things that we found when we were having discussions in the criminal justice IFA, and we had our Buncombe County subject matter experts, is that we found that not many Black people were utilizing these diversion services programs for the courts. And so we're looking at how can we develop programs in which Black folks are going to be able to, or they will utilize. One of the things that we found is there is a Partners for Justice program, which works with training courts as well as court staff on how to work and engage with Black folk when it comes to the criminal justice system. I have the website noted here. They're in several states. They are not located. That program is not located here in North Carolina, but I'm wondering, or we're wondering, if there's a way to recreate such a program, or maybe have them come and do that work here in North Carolina. And then we look for training, or look at training there. Right now, APD has fair and impartial training, EPIC training, Vistalar and CIT training. And we're looking at those trainings, and we felt like there needed to be more robust trainings taking place. So the state of California, looking at their post trainings that they have for their officers, and their cultural and diversity trainings that they have, and maybe being able to model some of the work that they're doing in California. And we looked at funding for community-based supportive services. And one of the things that came up with this was the strategic partnership grants that take place in Buncombe County. And so one of the things that we expressed concern about, or the groups expressed concerns about, is that there's money being given to these organizations, but the outcomes are not, we're not seeing the outcomes. We're not seeing the outcomes that are stopping, let's say, in gun violence or crime. And so looking at funding for community-based support services, the example of a organization right now locally that's doing work with reentry is Operation Gateway. So you'll see under recruitment, we added this, but we are not going to speak to this because we're still working on this particular recommendation, but we just wanted it noted in this presentation. And again, we come to this roadmap of how do we get there. So I know this was a shorter piece of a presentation because I skipped a couple of slides, but I will pause again to see if there are any questions or comments with regards to what was presented in this presentation.
Salah.
Yes.
Well, I'm a part of community engagement IFA. So one thing I do want to highlight is that it's not just the Buncombe County Strategic Partnership, it's also the city strategic partnership. Because it's just not limited to just Buncombe County. Both of them show the same type of thing happening. And so we're looking at all of that, which ties into the accountability, ongoing accountability that you got to speak to.
Okay, so I agree. And one of the things that we did when Deborah Campbell first came was they set up a strike team. I happened to be on that strike team to regroup or reorient strategic partnership grant based on rubrics and outcomes. And without that, just continuing to fund these same organizations, you look at the Buncombe County jail population last week, and it's still at 30%. And Blacks comprise not even half of that. So it tells me that whatever diversion programs or whatever they're doing is not working. So one of the things, and I guess it may be charged to another organization that's much more strategic that receives this funding, is just to make sure that whatever programs that are set up achieve the goal. And that's all that I would say. And also, I've noticed that there's no reference to community-oriented policing. That is a big deal right now. And you got a local man who is the chief of police in Mike Lamb. I've watched Lamb climb the ranks from, being on the street as patrol to now chief of police. And he was I was out in Beaverville last week. And Lamb brought his command staff out there to get to know the residents. So if we don't have conversation about what community policing and the plan for that is with the city of Asheville, we need to do so because they're right on it and they're on site. So I was, just pleasantly surprised to see him step and another officer who flipped my mind. So that is another thing that we also need to do. And even though we talk about examples of the Justice Resource Center, it looks like based on the data that a lot of the programs, even though they have the taxpayer resources, those programs need tweaking also. I'm always looking at data, and the data doesn't show me that none of these programs that are working. I mean, I'm not casting askance on anybody, but I do not want to recreate failure. I do not want, whether it's an organization that's created, because the people that get hurt are our local Black people. And I've had just about enough of that. So with that, I'll see. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you for bringing up the community policing. In our last, I want to say 2 criminal justice meetings, Lamb was there as well as Captain Brown, and we did have conversations around community policing. So thank you for bringing that to the forefront. Appreciate that.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there more comments or questions in reference to what has been presented so far? Ms. Weston, please.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure. Maybe I missed this, but part of it seems to me what needs to happen with the criminal justice piece is to reach earlier to our elementary age students. And so, and I'm a early learning preschool advocate, and I would even say if we could go that far, then that would be great, because one of the things that is statistically known is that if you don't catch these kids before they go to school, a lot of times by the time they get to school, and I'm talking about kindergartners, they're already lost. So I didn't see anything that spoke to trying to put something in place for elementary age students, because we know that our Black boys are being suspended at large amount of rates, and that needs to be addressed too, because if they're being suspended, I know of some elementary age students who are literally being taken out of schools by police officers too, as well. So help me out. Did I miss that?
So thank you so much, CC. So we talked about the school to prison pipeline, and so that falls under that. We have had conversations about that.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
so if you're able to go back to the presentation, I know that you all are saying it's too small on the screen, but you'll see eliminate the school to prison pipeline. And under that, we talk about school resource officers and eliminate the usage of discretionary authority by school resource officers in the charging of students for low-level offenses and misdemeanor offenses. But we also talked about how early do we start doing that work? And that's new conversation that we just started having about, like, how early do we try to reach them? So thank you for that. Thank you for bringing that forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'll turn it back over to you, Madam Vice Chair.
All right, it is now. Sandu, please, go ahead, sir.
So I one thing that well, first off, I want to say that I like the recommendations. One thing that I think can be added, and I feel that we can maybe kind of cross collateralize it with other recommendations, is the accountability piece. I kept hearing the need for community, I guess, getting community input, but the community also we have to hold accountability for our officers and the people who are making these decisions regarding criminal justice and how it affects us. So I think that it would be good to see some kind of accountability board or system in place that holds the accountability for decisions being made, which would consist of parents. It would consist of maybe I don't know if it's this commission, of course, officers, police officers, sheriff, whoever it is. But I think that there needs to be specific people in place to make sure that not just these recommendations, but in general, decisions that are made regarding how things are enforced within the city or county are actually held accountable. And so I don't know if I don't think I missed that, but I think that we could go a little bit deeper with who needs to be at that table.
Thank you, Asandu. And you're right. So it was touched on, but we can go deeper. And so I think the recommendation for the school to prison pipeline and to stop the harm that education, and I know you're a part of education, that information that's in there, I definitely think that we can dig a little bit deeper and add an accountability board of some
There is, and this is Dee Williams again, there is an accountability prototype for this. When those 24 Black students were suspended at Hill Street Middle School, we had the police chief, the district attorney, and the city manager who intervened to drop those criminal charges. And it took some doing, but there is that prototype. So we can't codify anything, but we surely can exert pressure. And the only way that we were able to do it was to organize as a community to get those things done. So the police chief is vital. It was the Asheville City School Board, which the city manager had a firm hand over at the time, and it may go away, but if the school system urge, but I certainly say that the county commissioners can also have a hand. So there is a prototype for stopping all of this school to prison pipeline. And we did get that principle out of the Hill Street Middle School system. I think they put her up at the central office, but there are prototypes. And I'm sure Deborah Campbell and the command staff will be happy to, and district attorney to give you that prototype. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee.
So one thing we did look at in our criminal justice IFA is the Buncombe County Sheriff. They have some form of discretionary board that a lot of the complaints and different things go to them. So we have been looking at some local models around that, Osandu. So we are, like, that is definitely being discussed and looked at. We definitely can go deeper on what that looks like in reference to the recommendation from our side, but there is an example of that is existing right now. We just didn't know that it was happening, that it was there, and how you get elected to it or appointed. It was interesting. But there is a local model with the sheriff's department. And so that's something that we have been talking about.
Thank you, Dawana.
And I don't think anything needs to be recreated if there's already tactics in place. It's just essentially making sure that the follow through is there, because one thing that we don't always do is we don't follow through. And so no need to recreate. It's just making sure that if there's something out there that we can use, that we do so to make sure what we want gets smoked on through.
Thank you, Osandu. And if I can just add, I know that there weren't many questions or comments around criminal justice. We will be sending out a survey. And so, I'm going to always implore that you all respond to the survey, and those questions will be specific to both of these presentations. So if there's anything that comes out, rises to the top after this meeting concludes, please add that to the survey, and we will be sure to respond to it. All right, Madam Vice Chair.
All right, it is now 7:17, and we are on discussing our next steps. So we'll actually be getting out of here a little bit sooner than normal. So our next steps are IFA draft recommendations discussion, and that will be at our next meeting on the 18th. The Cease to Harm final report will also come at our meeting next week on the 18th. And then I would like to open it up for public comment. I'm not sure how to tell if somebody is on there for public comment. So Salah, can you help me out?
I think that's Logan.
Logan.
Logan, do we have anyone for public comment? All righty, thank you so much.
All right, well, I would like to remind everyone that our next full commission meeting in person is on March 18th, which is next Monday. I look forward to seeing you all there, same time, same place. And to go over our meeting objectives review, we have community engagement update, which we did. The IFA report out. Thank you, Salah, for reporting out on both of those IFAs. And thank you for y'all's input. We definitely need them. The more we have these, so that we can make sure to make edits and definitely indoctrinate y'all's comments. So our pending items for our next meeting will be approving the minutes, since we didn't have a quorum at the time, and another update from community engagement. And
Right.
So other than that,
Madam Vice Chair, we have two hands that are up. We have Mr. Harris and we have Osandu McPeters that have comments.
oh, please, I guess Mr. Harris.
Okay, I don't know where this is a public comment. I was at the city council meeting, the last city council meeting, and the item was part of the agenda was whether or not giving money to Peak Academy. So I think the council directed the city manager to start working with Peak Academy. I think it was like $501,000 that they was going to work with. But I did notice that the mayor made a comment, and when she made a comment, she used the reparation word. And so, would giving money to Peak Academy be a reparation issue, a reparation entity or whatever. And so if it is, how do we as a commission support it, vote for it or whatever? So that they would continue, but the city council has directed the city manager to talk about it with Peak Academy and bring a report back. And I don't know whether the report is coming back at the next meeting or what. So what do we do?
Brad hand is up for that. Go ahead, Brad.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Mr. Harris, I can probably give you an update on that. So you are correct. At the last city council meeting, the council directed unanimously the city manager to begin working on the preparation of a grant agreement. That item is coming before the city council tomorrow night at their meeting for approval of the grant agreement that would grant around $501,000 of our remaining federal ARPA funds to Peak Academy. So that item is coming up tomorrow night for final approval.
Do you think it'll be a consent agenda item or for discussion?
It is part of, I believe, old business. So it's not part of the consent agenda. So there will be a public comment period.
Okay.
All right. I think oh, Sandra, your hand was up. I'm sorry.
No, my question, Natalie in the comments kind of spoke on that, so I'm good.
Okay.
All right.
Bobette
Bobette,
knows.
I seen your hand up. Bobette, yeah, I'm calling on you, Bobette.
I was just gonna piggyback on what Mr. Harris said, that I think that the city is gonna work hard to get that for Peak, that 501. But I think that as we think about that, there are other organizations that are doing great work. So let's not forget about Christine Avery and the excellent work that she's doing with the 3 schools that she has. I know Project Lighten Up after school and summer program. They are they're nonprofit. They work on getting grants and things to get that going. And I think it would be great for, and both all those programs are working to try to stop and to decrease that opportunity gap that they have. And I think that would be really something that we should work on, since we talk about, and I work with younger kids too. And I think that it's so important because we're seeing them at the age of 4 and 5 that are really in need. Before they even get to the 3rd grade, they're already saying they can't read and they're looking for places. They said that they're building more jails because they know that by the time they're in the 3rd or 4th grade, they cannot read well. And so they're just projection of thinking of what they can do. So I would say that all these other entities that have these private sector, after school schools, daycare, because just as Christine Avery is getting them prepared for Peak, then or wherever they're gonna go, I think these other entities have to be. I think that we should think about getting something for them too.
Thank you so much, Bobette. MZ, I see your hand is raised.
Yes. I was at the Economic Development IFA meeting this week, and a question arose that I wanted to just ask procedurally about getting recommendations passed through, recommendations on the table of the city council, on the county board of commissioners. Do we have to wait until June, or is there a process in place for us to do that like immediately?
Salah, take it away.
Okay. Great question, MZ. So I know that you all have passed, you've gotten a couple of recommendations. I think the stop the harm and when you asked for the audit, right? So those were recommendations that you put forth that were immediate recommendations. I would say, but I'm going to ask for the city and county staff who are also online in case I am wrong about this, that if there's something that you as a commission you agree upon and you're ready to put forward, that you should be able to put that forward. But again, I'm going to defer to city and county in case I am misspeaking.
So I do want to say, being a part of those back conversations around those immediate recommendations that we made, that it's really the commission's vote. Once the commission votes on it, once it's brought to the table and the commission has voted forward for it, it moves forward. And so I would like to say that in my experience, that's how it has been happening. Just as quickly as the community engagement, for instance, we voted on that and it moved forward fairly quickly. So that's been my experience with this process. So any other city and county staff who would like to speak to, please do.
I'm going to, MZ, if you don't mind, can you repeat the question? I was distracted. I don't want to misspeak when I answer.
How does the commission get a recommendation on the table of the city council and the county board of commissioners to vote on it?
Got it. So yeah, exactly what Salah was saying is that if you have a recommendation that is ready to go, that you feel confident in, it first needs to go to the full commission, and then from the full commission, voting through the process, just like as Dawana just said, what happened with the community engagement plan.
Okay.
Roy.
Are there any more questions or comments or anything? If not,
we have to remember that the city and the county are in the budgeting process now for 2025. So
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
thank you, Mr. Harris. Is there any more comments or questions? If not, I just want to remind everyone of our March 18th meeting, which is next week, in person, same time, same place. And I would like to see if anyone has a motion. Oh yeah, and please, we will be having our community engagement meeting. Thursday is virtual like this, so it's, you know what I'm saying, you can come. Thursday at 6 o'clock, and meeting information will be sent out to everyone. So if you would like to attend, please do so. I'm super excited about that. And don't forget to send me, Salah, and Vernisha if you're interested in working with that other community engagement stakeholder group and engaging the elder people, bringing them to the table. So that is it. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move.
Hold on, before we, I just wanted to add one quick thing. I'm so sorry, I was muted. I also just want to share that for the Cease to Harm audit report presentation, the Carter Development Group will be here in person. So I know last month it was, I think it was last month, my brain, it was virtual, but they will be physically in the space in person to present and answer questions. So I just wanted to let you all know that.
Super excited about that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because I thought that'd be virtual too. MZ, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Can they give us a copy of the report before they present?
You will get that copy of the report, yes.
Prior to the meeting, so y'all have
Prior
time
to
to
the
look
meeting,
at
yeah.
it. And please, 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 if you have any questions or concerns, please write them down and bring that to the meeting, because they will be there to answer those questions. So thank you all so much. Babette Mays has made the motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Who is that?
It's D Burris.
Oh, all right, D Burris second. So with that being said, the meeting is adjourned.
SB 490, introduced by Senator Stephen Bradford, is the first legislation that will create the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency.
The CAFA agency is a recommendation from the California Reparations Task Force final report.
Possible offices within the agency could include genealogy, strategic communications, data research collection,
as well as general counsel with social services and family affairs.
Tell your representative to support the upcoming 2024 reparations legislation.
Find them at findyourrep.legislature.ca.gov.